So last night was election night for them.
Yeah.
And they lost, Greg. You could see the emotion because they have put all of their eggs in this basket of lawfare. And now they're realizing that the judges at the Supreme Court aren't on their schedule. And so they're realizing that Joe Biden might have to win this himself. That's what you saw last night. Them realizing that this is going to be a free and fair election to a certain extent, where it's going to be mano a mano, and you're not going to have judges and lawyers screwing around with everything. Because they've been trying to persuade a handful of judges instead of 150 million voters. That's what they do. That's why they get so hysterical when you have Supreme Court nominations. That's why they go to mattresses for someone like Kavanaugh. Remember, that's how their agenda happens. It's all in the courts. It's very rarely legislatively. So when you have someone like Trump come in and beat Hillary, those were Hillary's 3 Supreme Court nominations. That would have changed the future of the country. That would have fundamentally transformed America. They don't have that now. And now they're freaking out about it.
It's election night 2016 all over again, gang. That was a brilliant observation by Jesse Waters. The legacy media just realized as of last night, it shocked them to the core. They've lost 2024. It's gone. Their lawfare has failed. That's why you're seeing temper tantrum after temper tantrum after temper tantrum all over the legacy media. They are suddenly realizing to their horror that their whole strategy to steal 2024 through the use of weaponized legalism just exploded in their faces. And we're going to see exactly how. Also, we got yet another optics disaster for Biden, this time at the border. We're going to see how Trump easily upstaged the incontinent in chief and made him look more pathetic than ever before. Greetings, everyone. It is Live Stream Friday. I am your host, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe. But we got a jam-packed show today. I'm sure you got tons to say in response, so make sure you click on the link below or go to the comment section below. Make sure you give me your comments. Unfortunately, as many of you know, our super chats have been disabled by YouTube. We were demonetized several weeks back. Thankfully, you have come to our rescue, gang. You've been so amazing. You've joined our Insiders Club where you have direct access to me so our relationship can never, ever be interrupted by big tech overlords. And so today you can still ask me your questions. Obviously, you can put your comments in the live chat below. But if you want to ask me your questions, all you have to do is just click on the link below and join our Insiders Club. First, you'll give us your email address, so that way we'll definitely never lose touch with each other, no matter what happens in terms of any of these censorship shenanigans by big tech. But then you have the chance to be able to join our Insiders Club, and that's where you can ask me your questions, is in our virtual studio there. And again, I just want to return the favor. Some of you are so gracious to give me 10, 20, 50 bucks in the super chats whenever you ask your question. I can't thank you enough for that kind of generosity. But today, sign up for our Insiders Club, and you can ask me all the questions you want for just $5 for the entire month. It's just a fraction of the cost that you normally graciously give to me, but it's the least that I can do to show my appreciation for how you have come to our rescue. I don't know if you know, I think I've told you guys, nearly 6,000 of you have joined our Insiders Club. It's an amazing network, a fellowship of patriots all over the world. That's what's so awesome. So just click on that link below, join our Insiders Club, ask me your questions. All you want, $5 a month. You're going to love it. And I'll answer them right here on this live stream. And gang, seriously, as every week I tell you from the bottom of my heart, I can't thank you enough for how you rescued us from this real bombshell we got from big tech, just completely and totally demonetizing our channel. They thought they could cripple us. In many ways, we're stronger now than ever, and it's all because of you. So God bless you guys for that. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. Now, I want to begin. I know it's a little early in the morning, but maybe you could get ready to butter the popcorn, because I want to begin with a montage for you. And this is a montage I think is very much reflective of what you just heard Jesse Waters talking about there in terms of the meltdown that they're going through. That's right. We should have a video, melt the butter for the liberal meltdown, right? Liberal tears taste so wonderful. I think Jesse nailed it I think he nailed, when I saw that commentary he gave, I said, that's it. That's my live stream tomorrow. It is 2016 all over again for the legacy media. They are suffering another they're suffering another collective, what do you want to call it, a concussion. They are realizing. I mean, it took a little time. It was really interesting. You saw the commentary at the beginning of the Supreme Court decision. You saw the commentary go, "Oh, this is bad news. This isn't good. Oh, this isn't. I mean, this is really bad. I mean, holy crap. This like destroys everything we hope for." You saw it start to seep in over time. That the Supreme Court, which of course is intervening in the midst of all of this corrupt lawfare, right? And taking up the J6 case of Trump, whether or not he has immunity. The Supreme Court has an effect. They have just officially stopped the weaponized lawfare of the Democratic Party. They have intervened in the midst of all that madness. They have effectively put it to a halt. And to the extent that they have put it to a halt, the legacy media and Democrats are realizing that the Supreme Court just basically handed Donald J. Trump the 2024 election. I'll let them show you. Butter the popcorn. Take a look.
Of the court is evident in what they are doing with the pacing here.
It is frustrating to me that the idea that the U.S. Supreme Court is going to be delaying this trial.
It's a bad look for them. Yeah. It's a to have taken this.
It is an unmistakable sign from the MAGA majority of the Trump-created court that they are with him.
There is a lot tonight to be pessimistic about.
Some of the justices simply want to assist Donald Trump in delaying the resolution of this case in the hope of pushing his trial off past the election.
And I am beyond terrified, Nicole, right now for our country.
We can't put all of our hopes in the Supreme Court. The people need to be engaged and aroused at this point to demand that there be justice.
Engaged and aroused. I am beyond terrified, Nicole, for our country. I mean, they're such bad actors. That's the other thing in this virtual politics. They're so bad. They're so horrible. Gang, that was the lay of the legacy media last night. As you can see, they're in total meltdown mode. They are literally melting down. That was a collective temper tantrum akin to what we saw the night of November 8th, or better, in the wee hours of November 9th, 2016, the early morning hours. We have to remember that you just saw a whole collection of literal clowns who thought that the weaponization of the legal system that they put in place, particularly in the case of 2020, but then for 2024, you have to realize they weaponized an entire system for the purpose of never allowing another Donald Trump to ever win again. The legacy media and the deep state teamed up to so rig the system, particularly in 2020, that they convinced themselves we would never, ever see another Donald Trump ever win again. They had so gamed the system that there would never be another 2016 ever. But there was just one slight miscalculation on the part of their conniving schemes. Just one, it seems. There was a major oversight, a major blind spot in the midst of this Democrat deception. They assumed that they could rely on the Supreme Court to stay out of their rigging shenanigans for 2024. The Democrats assumed, rightly so, if I were one of them, I would have assumed it as well. They assumed that the Supreme Court would continue to cower in the kind of feckless cowardliness they exemplified in the aftermath of 2020, when the Supremes basically barred their gigantic wooden doors and hid behind their judicial benches. We all know, to our everlasting frustration, the Supremes were nowhere to be found in our efforts to rectify the obvious rigging of the 2020 election. The Democrats and their shameless shills in the legacy media simply assumed that the Supremes would continue in that cowardly posture and stay out of their attempts to comparably rig the 2024 election, in this case through lawfare, through the weaponized legalism of the court system. As it turns out, the Democrats and their shills in the legacy media were dead wrong. That assumption did indeed make an ass out of them. As you all know, the Supreme Court has announced that they are indeed intervening, that they are indeed going to take up Trump's claim to presidential immunity. And the hilarious irony in all of this is that, as you just saw, as every legacy media pundit realized to their horror last night, it doesn't even matter what the Supreme Court's decision ultimately ends up being. This is the beauty in all of this. It doesn't matter what the Supreme Court ultimately decides in this case. It's the very fact that they have intervened. It's the very fact that the Supremes have stolen the case away from the Democrats. They have taken away the Democrats' control, their jurisdiction over this case. The Supremes have literally taken the case away from the Democrats and away from the clowns in the circus of the legacy media. And that is what they're freaking out over. The Democrats no longer control the case. The case against Trump, the J6 case, is now in the hands of the Supreme Court for months from here on in. And there's absolutely nothing the Democrats can do about it from this point forward, thus effectively ending their lawfare against Trump in their number one case against him, which was the J6 case. That's what they're realizing last night. They're realizing it doesn't matter how the Supremes rule. It's the fact that the Supreme Court, particularly the 6 conservative judges on that court, are now in control of this case. The Democrats' lawfare efforts against Trump in this J6 case have effectively been shut down. And they're losing it. They're losing it. They're realizing that their whole scheme to steal 2024 just got snatched away from them. Take a look at this meltdown from MSNBC.
The appeals court gives a bulletproof ruling, as Dahlia says, and they still decide to take it up.
What it says is that they are corrupted political actors who act in bad faith. The reason why people like Mark and people like Dahlia seem to have a crystal ball is because they're real, because they're realists, and they understand the court for what it is. And at some point, people in the media, people at home, and people sitting in the White House have to stop pretending that the Supreme Court is some kind of benign, trying to do its best institution and start to realize that there are 6 Republicans, not conservatives, Republicans on the Supreme Court who view it as their job to help the Republican Party. And until we do something about that, until we take away that power, until we draw the line on them there, they will continue to do this. They will help Trump. They will take away abortion rights. They will end affirmative action. They will liberalize gun rights. They will do all of it until we stop them. And somebody needs to start listening in the higher echelons of the Democratic Party, because we will keep losing every day we allow these 6 Republicans in robes to rule over all of us.
Somebody has to do something. Somebody has to do something. They've got to do something. He was blowing a gasket on national television. Well, nobody's watching it. I mean, if that is not the very definition of a clown, I don't know what is. I mean, I was afraid for the safety of that young lady on the table. I thought he was just going to smack her. I mean, that so-called contributor, Eli Mistal, whatever his name. I mean, that is the very definition of a walking clown. I mean, you could literally see him. Can't you imagine him sitting there with oversized Ronald McDonald red shoes on? I mean, it's so hilarious to watch these people flip out when their world starts crumbling right before their very eyes. But it gets worse, gang. It gets even worse. What we just witnessed is just half the reason why these woke clowns are panicking. It's just, there's another half that's making it even worse for them. You're going to love this. If you're just joining us, gang, if you want to ask me a question, because YouTube has demonetized this channel, just click on the link below. Join our Insiders Club. Ask me your questions through that platform. It's just $5 a month. You can ask me as many questions as you like. And also, gang, if you're regular to this channel, then you know how I feel about our government and our financial system. I mean, it's no secret I'm a huge believer in diversifying your money with precious metals like gold and silver. But when it comes to buying precious metals, you need the right company in your corner. And that's why I partnered with the top-rated precious metals company, Goldco, because reputation matters, gang. You know that. Goldco is a 6-time Inc. 5000 winner. They are the 2022 Company of the Year, and they've helped people like you and me place over $2 billion. That's billion with a B in gold and silver. They're amazing. And right now, they're offering my supporters up to $10,000 in bonus silver when opening a qualified IRA account. This is your opportunity to protect yourself from our out-of-control corrupt government. So don't pass it up. Click on that link below right now and take action today. All right. So the Supreme Court has taken up this J6 case, and in so doing, it's taking weaponized legalism out of the Democrats' hands. That is just half of why they're freaking out here. The panic really started to set in when they turned around and suddenly looked at all the polls. Now, again, this is where Jesse Waters' analysis, I think, was absolutely spot on. You see, over the last several months, the Democrats, how do I put this? The Democrats have been basically throwing all their eggs in a single basket of corruption. And that basket, of course, was in their deliberate attempt to persuade a handful of judges that Trump is the Antichrist and therefore needs to be barred from office, instead of trying to persuade 150 million voters that Trump is the Antichrist and therefore should be barred from office. This was the brilliant insight on the part of Jesse, because it, at least in part, explains why Joe Biden has been so colossally collapsing in the court of public opinion. Now, we talked about this on yesterday's video, but the polls for Biden are simply beyond anything any Democrat could have ever imagined in their worst nightmares. If you look at the articles that were written about Biden in his first few months in office, they were all about how the American people love this new administration, how the adults are back in charge, how excited they are for Biden, what a disaster Trump was, blah, 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 blah. That's all we heard for month after month after month in the first few months of Biden's time in office. Then we start to get indicators. At that 100-day mark, we found Biden had one of the lowest approval ratings of any president at the 100-day mark. And of course, we got the so-called fact checkers, right? Who come out, the Democrat paid fact check. It's not true. It's not true. Trump's polling was much lower, blah, blah, blah. That's all we heard. And then Afghanistan, the Afghanistan withdrawal, the botched, horrendous, embarrassing failure of Afghanistan withdrawal in August 2021. And a lot of scholars have argued his polls just plummeted ever since. That's where they really began. The plummet really began. Now, gang, we're hitting levels that no incumbent has ever seen. We've got two back-to-back polls that came out this week, Bloomberg and Emerson, two polls showing the exact same thing. And by the way, Bloomberg and Emerson are no fans of Trump. They've been very harsh to Trump. Both polls back to back, Trump is crushing Biden in every single battleground state. Every single one. Two polls, each with their own methodology, each with their own sampling size, their own weights, measures, adjustments. Two distinct polls, both showing, corroborating the exact same thing. The latest Bloomberg poll, it just dropped yesterday. It shows Trump crushing Biden every single swing state, and we're talking by huge margins. We're talking Trump is up 10 in North Carolina. He's up 9 in Pennsylvania. I mean, that's the election right there, gang. It's over. He takes Pennsylvania by just whatever, 3 points, whatever, it's over. He's up 9 in Arizona. He's up 7 in Nevada and Georgia. He's up 6 in Wisconsin. Remember, Wisconsin, Joe Biden was supposed to win Wisconsin by 17 points in 2020. He won it by 20,000 votes. 6 in Wisconsin and 1 in Michigan. I'm a little suspicious of that given how well Trump did in Michigan on Tuesday as compared to Biden in their primaries. And on top of that, again, we talked about this earlier this week. We had a poll that came out from the solid blue state of Maine. Now, this was a shocker. Let's go to the Maine poll. Yeah, we got it here. It had Trump up by 6. Now, you've got to let this hit you. Maine is a blue state. Okay, no Republican has won Maine since 1988, since George Herbert Walker Bush. Okay, Maine is a solid blue state. This is a poll that was taken by the polling firm Pan Atlantic. They have a very good accuracy record. They predicted that Biden would win Maine by around 9 points in 2020, which is exactly what happened. Maine is solidly red. This same polling firm, Pan Atlantic, to their shock, even though they saw that the polling sampling that they had was +5 Democrat, to their shock, Trump came out 6 points ahead of Biden. Gang, Trump could win Maine. I mean, he's already on track. Even if he just won half those swing states, he's already on track, according to analysis from Decision Desk. He's already on track to win 312 electoral votes in November. That's the biggest electoral landslide since 1988 for a Republican. And that's not even including Maine. That's not including every single swing state. And if Maine is about to fall, gang, what other blue state is going to fall? I mean, Trump thinks they've got a shot at New York. Trump thinks that's why he's thinking of holding a rally in Madison Square Garden. But what Jesse pointed out there, I think, goes a long way to explaining this dominance. It's not just simply that Trump is running an awesome campaign, which he is, despite all the lawfare, despite the election interference of Nikki Haley, despite all, frankly, I think through all of that, it's not even despite it, it's through it. Trump 2.0 is freaking awesome. He's crushing it. Remember, he's got the easiest campaign pitch on the planet. Easiest campaign pitch. When I was president, things were great. Biden came in and literally screwed everything up. Everything went to hell in a handbasket. Vote for me and I'll make everything great again. It's the easiest campaign pitch on the planet. When I was in office, we had peace abroad and prosperity at home. Biden came in and gave us only war and depression. Vote for me and I'll bring back peace and prosperity. It's that simple. And it's clearly winning over the vast majority of voters. But as Jesse Waters pointed out at the beginning here, the Democrats are actually contributing to this winning message by de facto ignoring voters, bypassing trying to appeal to voters, and instead putting all their eggs in the basket of trying to convince a handful of judges that Trump is the Antichrist. I mean, again, they've got no choice. Biden can't campaign, and he can't just hide in his basement this time. I mean, he can't campaign. He can't even, we'll find in a second when we'll take a look at, can't even walk along the border without help. I mean, he literally needed assistance walking. We'll see it. So they know he can't campaign. They know they can't beat Trump on the campaign trail, so they're trying to beat him in the courts. They know they'll lose in the court of public opinion, so they're trying to weaponize the courts to rig 2024. But now, even the courts have been taken away from them. And so, as a result, the Democrats find themselves today reaping the whirlwind of their efforts to try to convince the courts that Trump is bad rather than convince the court of public opinion. They are waking up this morning recognizing now both courts have turned against them. Write that down. If you want to understand what's really happening today, March 1st, happy March, everybody, by the way. March 1st, 2024, what's really happening? Democrats are freaking out because both courts have turned against them. The court of public opinion has turned against them, and now the legal courts have turned against them, with the Supreme Court taking their weaponized legalism away from them. Both the legal courts and the court of public opinion have turned against them. That is what we saw in that montage. That's why you had that clown haven't blown a gasket on national television that nobody watches. It was election night 2016 all over again last night for the legacy media. They just realized, gang, that as things stand, they have just lost 2024. It's gone. You saw those margins. How are they going to make up 10-point margins? How are they going to do that? It's gone. Their lawfare has failed. The Supreme Court has stepped in and in effect said, enough. We've seen enough. And we're putting a stop to this. And the legacy media is having a collective temper tantrum over it. They're just not used to not getting their way. And it gets even worse for them. Yesterday, there's a reason why you had that meltdown. It's not just that they're losing in the court of public opinion. It's not just that they lost in court. Something else happened yesterday. What happened yesterday? Put it in the chat. Everyone saw it. The whole country saw it. Gang, the whole world saw it. What happened? What was the optics disaster yesterday? The world saw a presidency in peril. And I'm going to show you exactly how. First, if you are just joining us, if you want to ask a question, because YouTube has unfortunately demonetized our channel, just click on the link below. Join our Insiders Club. Ask me all the questions you want through that platform. I will answer them here right now. Just $5 a month. It's my way of just giving back to you because of how much nearly 6,000 of you have joined since we've had this unpleasant development in the life of this channel. And I can't thank you enough for helping us thrive during such a time. Also, as you know, if you're a regular to this channel, you know that we're all about building the future now by creating a parallel economy dedicated to faith, family, and freedom. And ironically, we can actually build that economy by learning how to use the very corruption of our ruling political class against them. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Politicians like Nancy Pelosi, they've been getting insider trading secrets for decades now, enabling their returns to beat the market every single year. What a coincidence. But guess what? Thanks to a little-known SEC database, we can have access to the very same trading secrets that these politicians are privy to. We get to see what stocks corporate CEOs are buying up in real time, and then we get to piggyback on their trades and gain the same advantage for ourselves that Pelosi and the crooks in D.C. have. My friend Ross Givens has been tracking insider trading for years now, and his recommendations have led to investment returns of over 200%. Some of it as high as nearly 1,500%. Ross is absolutely amazing. And now it's your turn. Click on that link below right now and learn how you too can learn to trade like Pelosi. Click on that link and learn how to gain an insider advantage for yourself today. All right, gang. This is just too good. It wasn't just the nation that saw the radical contrast between Trump and Biden yesterday at the southern border. Let's see that southern border clip. We should be seeing that right now. The whole world saw it. There we are. The whole world. A little late there, guys. Let's go. Let's get on top of things. The whole world saw the radical contrast between Trump's self-confident swag and Biden's frail feebleness. I mean, look at that. You'll notice he doesn't even swing his arms when he walks. Look at how tepid he is. I mean, he literally looks like he could fall at any moment. Just one massive, big breeze will knock him over. By contrast, gang, I mean, I know it's sad. I hate even just pointing it out at this point. It just seems so freaking cruel, but I blame the Democrats for it. But by contrast, gang, with Trump, this is what happened at one point in his visit. Take a look at this. He's waving at him.
They like Trump. Can you believe it? They like the governor.
They like Trump. Can you believe it? He's standing at the fence, right, with the razor wire on it. He's standing at that fence at Eagle Pass, and he's just freaking waving at the wannabe illegals on the other side. I mean, he's just showing off at that point. And then you even heard someone go, Trump, Trump. And he turns around and like, even they love me. Even they love me. I mean, seriously. That's like doing freaking cartwheels on your victory lap. I mean, I don't know whose idea this was among Biden's team. Seriously, I don't know whose idea it was. Who thought this would be a good idea to show up at the border at all, but showing up at the border at the exact same time that Trump is there? Obviously, it's the same people who thought it would be a good idea to put a cognitively declining 81-year-old in front of a press pool to try to assuage their concerns about his cognitive health, only to confirm them. Or it might be the same one who thought it was a good idea to put 81 freaking candles on his birthday cake. Yeah, that'll make a great picture. I mean, with AIDS like this, who needs enemies? But again, gang, it gets, if you can believe it, it gets even worse. Because as we speak, illegal immigration is now the single number one issue, the top issue of concern for voters going into November. That is the last issue that Democrats want as voters' number one concern. It's not the economy anymore. And that's not because the economy has gotten better. It certainly hasn't. It's because we're witnessing a massive, violent crime wave perpetrated largely by illegal migrants sweeping all across the country. And people are literally getting killed as a result. And it's not going to surprise you who voters overwhelmingly blame for these insane criminal conditions. Poll after poll after poll shows that voters overwhelmingly, we're talking by supermajorities, blame Joe Biden for this mess we're in. And how could they not? How could his feebleness not be a symbol of the porousness, the feebleness of our border? So we can be sure that the optics from yesterday at the southern border, with Biden looking so frail, so feeble, and Trump looking so freaking virulent and dominant, that this is only going to further exacerbate the damage to Biden at the southern border, the damage of his own making, that is further damaging any prospects he has of winning re-election, even remotely. So all of this is to say that things, frankly, could not possibly be worse for the Democrats as of today. The Supreme Court has intervened, taking the J6 case, which was their strongest case against Trump. The Supreme Court has effectively taken that case away from them, all as Biden's poll numbers implode to levels never seen before by any incumbent, made all the worse by the optics disaster at the southern border. Needless to say, it hasn't been a good week for the Democrats. Over to you, gang. As Josh, our moderator, puts together your questions, remember, if you do have a question, because YouTube has demonetized our channel, just click on that link below. Join our Insiders Club. Ask me any question you like. I will be happy to answer it on this platform. Just $5 a month. I'll answer it. It's just my way of saying thank you for supporting us during a time like this. And also, we got an important word from one of our amazing sponsors.
Looking to get out of your job in this economy and maybe considered a business or franchise opportunity, but you were put off by the $1 million price tag? I could not recommend more. Tapping into the parallel economy with your own online e-commerce store business and gaining a life of freedom. My friend and fellow patriot Alex Alberon has a tremendous track record of building successful online businesses for Turley Talkers in our community, and I'm so grateful to have him sponsoring this video today. He's a member of Trump's International Golf Club. He's a close ally of President Trump's, and he's a multi-million-dollar online entrepreneur. He's the real deal. Alex offers an amazing program where he personally helps you launch your own online e-commerce store. So he'll help you with everything from selecting products, creating your store, marketing your products, much, much more. And all for a fraction of the cost to start a traditional business opportunity. Gang, seriously, stop dreaming. Turn your dreams into reality. Discover how you can apply your business ability and Alex's framework for online success to create a positive impact for you and your family. Book a free consultation with Alex to learn more by clicking on the link below or visiting yourecombusiness.com/Turley. Thanks, Alex.
All right, guys, what do we got? I noticed in my interview with Alex, I think last week when we played that spot, I was wearing that black and white shirt. And then I noticed in my interview with Alex, I'm wearing this shirt. I got to get a new wardrobe. I don't know what's going on. Let's see. And I had to reinsert to play it. I don't know. I just got a note from Josh. Anyway, it looks good. It looks good. All right, what do we got here? It's me, Steve. Question, extreme urgency for Illinois. Do not vote yet. Prickster had Trump removed from ballot. That's right. This silly judge. Again, they just keep in mind that judge needed to do something to lift Democrat spirits. I mean, that silly decision that no Democrat really takes even seriously, that was just to provide some semblance of comfort for the dwindling audience of the legacy media. That's all it was, in my opinion. Obviously, it's going to be overturned. All those votes cast will be thrown out if early voted. Wait until Supreme Court steps in. If they roll Trump, will have to be write-in. Do not circle his name, write him in only. All right, good. No, I mean, I appreciate very much the caution here. Yes, the Supreme Court will overturn this. It doesn't look even remotely like it's going to stand. The questions that they were asking this insane lawyer who was arguing on behalf of basically a dictatorial system, a banana republic, were pretty revealing that they had no intention whatsoever of allowing courts to strip somebody from a ballot. So, but granted, everything you're saying, everyone, make sure you take that to heart here. William, Dr. Steve, can you comment on Dr. Paul Kenger's support of Ukraine in a recent interview on Relevant Radio? His takes seem to be that UK needs to be supported and that Putin is a thug with the recent death of his rival and assassination. Thank you, Will. Let me just take a look at Paul. Yeah, I don't. William, basically, I'm just going to have to go by what you're telling me there to comment, because I don't know Dr. Paul Kenger's. I'm not. I don't know what. I would want to give his argument its due, so I don't want to reduce it to a straw man and then just beat up something he doesn't hold to. So I'm just going to take what you say there. The UK needs to be supported. I'm all for obviously supporting both UK and the United States, but not globalists. And the UK right now is overrun by globalists. All right, both in if anything, it seems Labour is even less globalist than the Tories right now. The Tories literally have no idea what to do with the new constituency they got in December 29 with that massive landslide victory. But now they're the party of the British working class, and they betrayed him every chance they got. They ran on 10 years ago on stopping immigration. They've actually increased it to its highest levels we've seen in like decades. So the Tories are reaping the whirlwind of their stupid, pro-Brussels, pro-globalist, pro-DC policies, rather than to be all in with the working class. So I'm all for the UK. I'm not for globalists. And globalists are all about maintaining a unipolar world. It's maintaining the world that was structured by the United States after post-World War II, instituting the IMF, instituting the World Bank, instituting World Trade Organization. Those were the institutions that provided the rules-based order that all nations were expected to abide by after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. That world order is unraveling. And Ukraine is one of the theaters in which we're seeing that unipolar world unravel in favor of the rise of a multipolar world. And again, this is something that John Mearsheimer argued for years ago, long before the Ukraine conflict got hot. He predicted, I think it was back in 2014 or 2015, that Ukraine was going to be a center of Russian pushback, that Ukraine would end up in a full-blown war because NATO powers were pushing their influence into Russia's hegemonic sphere of influence. When Russia was under Yeltsin, they had no hegemony whatsoever. They had no global sphere of influence whatsoever. Now with Putin, they have risen to be a major superpower, just as China has, just as India has, just as, to a certain extent, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran. It is a multipolar world with multiple power centers. And you're not in a multipolar world, you can no more infringe on their hegemonic sphere of power, then they can infringe on ours, i.e. the Cuban Missile Crisis. You can't, again, in 1991 you could, but not anymore. And so that's what Mearsheimer was arguing. We've got a bunch of adults in the UK and in DC who still believe it's 1991, and they can encroach on anybody and everybody that they want. I even disagree with Vivek on Taiwan. Vivek's all into defending Taiwan. Vivek, you can't do that anymore. Taiwan is in China's hegemon, China's sphere of influence. It is part of the rise of civilization states, and we're going to have to learn how to navigate a civilizationalist world, a new conservative religious world where the rules of 1991 no longer apply. In terms of the death of his rival via assassination, so you're talking about Alexei Navalny. Alexei Navalny, unfortunately for Dr. Kenger, if that's was his argument, Alexei Navalny is part of what's called virtual politics. Virtual politics is a scripted politics that is made up. It's artificial. It's not real. And Alexei Navalny is basically a character invented by Western media to make you think that there is a huge pro-liberal, pro-Western consensus, or at least very significant opposition to Putin in Russia. There ain't. Every poll out there shows Navalny did not get more than 10% support. Navalny was a peripheral figure among Russians. And one of the reasons why they didn't support him is because the West did. And Russians have grown to be very, very suspicious of anything the West wants. They think the West only wants to do them harm. So if you have the total support of Biden and the UK and all the Western media, I guarantee in Russia, I guarantee you're going to be one of the most unpopular people there. And then now we're getting information that he died of natural causes. Again, we don't know. All we know in the end is Navalny had nowhere near the influence or support. And this is not to beat up on the guy. God bless him. I'm sorry for him or his family, but he has nowhere near the support that we claim that he does. It's more of our government and our people lying to us. It's that sad. So there you go, Will. That would be my response. Josh, Yeshua. The Democrats and Nikki Haley have all used language saying Trump will not be elected president like 2016, right? What other means of foul play could they possibly come up with or have available at their disposal? A good question. I don't know. They could try to manufacture another kind of Russian collusion hoax. It wouldn't be that. I know they're trying a Russian 2.0. It's just falling on deaf ears now, talking about crying wolf. That's what I mean. I just think no matter what they try to hit Trump with, it's going to be treated with so much suspicion by so many people because they just see, even Charlemagne the God, the sort of, pop culture icon there, commentator, even he's coming out and saying, just every election, it's so predictable. They just come out and say, oh, these guys are the worst. They're terrible. They're going to kill you and everything. But they never do. And they don't even really take it that seriously. So I'm assuming it would be some kind of virtual politics where they make up some scandal and try to convince people of its plausibility. Outside of that, I don't know. Heaven forbid they do anything physically to him. Caleb, question 1 of 2. We've followed the political career of Prime Minister Giorgia Maloney. However, recently I found information indicating that she and Ursula von der Leyen of the EU were in Kiev. The possibility was suggested that they were encouraging or greenlighting F-15 strikes inside of Russian sovereign lands. Is there a follow-up to that? I see question 1 of 2. Or should I just go with that, Josh? Yeah, there we go. 2 of 2. Yet upon further research, she has a child with a domestic partner. Yeah, she's not married, right? I'm concerned that she's a permutation of Italian Nikki Haley. She does not live out the tenets of the Christian faith in her own life. She appears to be pro-war. Is von der Leyen bullying Maloney is Maloney's ability to resist the EU and her ability to secure a significant portion of Europe's soft underbelly? Okay, yeah. No, this is a great question. And we've always known that about Maloney. Maloney's had a child out of wedlock. She's never been married. I don't think she's been married. But I was there in Verona and she actually brought it up. She turns around and says, hey, I mean, I take responsibility. I don't tell you to raise my kid. I don't turn around and say, now give me welfare. I had my child. I wouldn't even think of having an abortion. I'm pro-life. I had my child and I am raising my child and I'm taking responsibility for my actions. So she's actually flipped that on its head in a way that's very consistent with Christian values. As someone who's not, she's not, how do you say, she's not reveling in, oh, look at me, I have illegitimate children. No, she's like, yeah, I did, and I'm taking responsibility for it. I'm not telling you to take responsibility for it. That's the difference. I'm not a liberal. So she's dealt with that. Now, she just got dealt a blow. What was it? Where was it yesterday? They had election in Italy, and 5-star won just by a couple of thousand votes. It was a 5-star. Where was it? Is it in Sardinia? Yeah, Sardinia. 5-star, which is their populist left party, was running against I guess this is the mayor of the city who have a lot of power in Italy. It's almost like governors. So a mayor of the city versus a Brothers of Italy candidate. And it was, I mean, it came down to the wire. It was like, 50.1% to 49.9%. It came down really to low. But Maloney should have run away with that election. She didn't. Now, the good news is the mainstream right and left are gone from Italian politics. It's either populist left or populist right. So that's a huge victory in that sense. However, Maloney is complicating things. She's absolutely complicating things. She's doing a Boris Johnson. And I agree with you. I mean, she's doing a lot of good things, very, very Christian conservative in the legislation that's being passed in Italy. But in the end, she's being pro-Ukraine and she's being pro-EU. And that being pro-EU means being relatively pro-migrant. And that is going to sink the populist right. If they're not careful, the populist left can exploit that and go full-blown welfare chauvinist. Welfare chauvinism, this is what's happening in Europe now, that the left is embracing, is that we're going to give you all the socialism you could ever want, but you got to be a citizen. If you're here illegally, or even if you're a migrant and you're not a citizen, you don't get any public assistance whatsoever. So welfare chauvinism, which used to be owned by the populist right, is now ironically going more and more to the populist left as the populist right figures, as they come to power, try to play nice with the EU. Don't ever, again, it's exactly what Javier Milei of Argentina says. You can never, ever, ever give these globalists an inch. If you give them an inch, they'll take a mile and they'll stab you in the back at the end. So yes, Georgia Maloney is in. She's got to be very careful. That election definitely may be a wake-up call. Get back to your populist right roots, your civilizationalist populist roots that got you elected in the first place. Do that, you'll have super majorities as far as the eye can see. If you betray it, people will go elsewhere and they'll go to the populist left. It's that simple. Thank you, Caleb. That's a great question. Yeshua, is Trump going to have to dissolve his assets in New York to pay for his legal fees, or does he have a plan to pay the $400 million or so to get the appeal filed? Yeah, so the last I read is he's going to be able to take out a loan, which is good. That's how Trump tends to operate. He's going to be able to take out a loan, and then he'll be able to pay off the loan over time, which he can do. Remember, looks like he's getting several billion with a B, dollars in an acquisition deal that's going on just with Truth Social. So it's pretty impressive. But yeah, I mean, this is maddening. I can't even believe this is happening. But as you see, Letitia James, the attorney general in New York, she's just going full scorched earth on their economy, and she's going to destroy it. People are leaving New York by record. They were already leaving New York in record numbers. Where do you see what happened? Now it's going to be, they're going to go full Galt. The business owners are going to start leaving New York as well. And because why subject themselves to such blatant legal weaponization? Ryan, Dr. Steve, with Jabba the Hutt, aka JP, trying to remove Trump from Illinois ballot 3 times. Do you know now? Do you believe Illinois could be getting to turn red? We all know Trump does not need Illinois to win, so why else? No, granted. Again, I think the latest move there was to try to give some talking points to the legacy media of saying, okay, well, maybe all's not lost. They're trying to recover their lawfare. That's all they have. And the lawfare got hit so horrifically this week. And I mean, you could see it. I just played for you that montage. They're just flipping out. I mean, it's apocalypse now as far as they're concerned. So this was just that this judge is, who I believe was just a 2-bit judge that basically deals with traffic tickets. I mean, she's a loser. I mean, she's totally insignificant, and everyone knows it's going to be overturned. So, I mean, anyway, it's just so silly. Can Trump win Illinois? Not as long as Cook County has the population center that it is, and as long as it's voting the way it is. As long as Chicago continues to have this alliance between the upper class and the underclass around woke politics. Remember, Brandon Johnson got voted in, not by your sort of moderate income earner in Chicago. He got voted in by the underclass, and then got voted in by the upper class. They create this coalition of wokeness to impose anarcho-tyranny on the rest of us. And it's just causing businesses like Caterpillar and all these other companies to just pick up and leave Chicago. So they're only hurting the underclass, because that's the jobs that they would be able to enter into. So it's just a disaster. No, as long as our major metropolitan centers continue to be on the suicidal mission to destroy themselves, which is what they're doing, as long as they're self-immolating themselves, there's I don't see much hope for Illinois. Every once in a while, you can get in a Republican to sneak in there, but it's very hard for them to stay for long periods of time. Michael, the Supreme Court rules against Colorado in a unanimous decision, as we expect them to. Will liberal states try to ignore the Supreme Court, or will Biden try to dissolve it? I mean, good question. I mean, Biden will. If Biden were to try to dissolve it, it would be civil war at that point. Then Republicans would have to step up and demand his total complete impeachment and conviction in the Senate. So he would only end up again destroying himself. Will they ignore it? I don't know how they could ignore it without being in contempt of the Supreme Court and then thereby possibly removed from office. So we'll have to see. Again, I don't see anyone. Usually the legacy media telegraphs what they're going to do, and I haven't seen anyone in the legacy media other than just like that clown Eli just complain and freak out. We got to do something, but they have no idea what they can possibly do. So, Missy, how can we stop John Cornyn, in Texas, from taking over Mitch McConnell's? He's terrible. Would be no better than what we had. I agree. I think Cornyn would just be McConnell Part 2.0. He would be Paul Ryan 2.0 if you just bring in the House, some figure from the House. He's not as bad as a Mitt Romney, but he is pretty bad. What you'd have to do is you'd have to contact your senators, contact Ted Cruz, and say, no way. I mean, if you're in Texas, contact your senators and tell them, if they're Republicans, no way, do not go for that. Rand Paul's name is getting floated around quite a bit because Rand Paul is MAGA enough to appease all MAGA types, but he's also classical libertarian enough to appease sort of the National Review wing of the shrinking, but still very prominent in the Senate wing of the party. So I'm thinking Rand Paul would be fantastic. But again, it's Senate is our House of Lords. They tend to operate by seniority. So that's the way Senate does things, for right or for wrong, for good or for ill. So just make sure you contact your senators and say, under no circumstances are we to have a John Cornyn. Paul, in reference to Rachel Maddow's rant comparing Nixon to Trump, I'm no fan whatsoever of Rachel Maddow, but I think she might be right on this one. If Nixon had to be pardoned for crimes he may have committed during his presidency, wouldn't the same be true for Trump? The only kicker here would be that Nixon's crimes were real, but the charges against Trump were bogus. What's your opinion? Oh, yeah. That's the thing about Rachel Maddow. We mock her and we ridicule her a lot, but she is actually sharp. She's not dumb. She does because of the ideological commitments, she does find herself arguing some very silly things periodically. And she's doing that with this one now. She's like, if we elect Trump, that's the end of our republic, because he'll never leave office. That's her kind of her thesis that she's pushing there. And her argument is because he knows the moment he leaves office, he could be convicted, or he could be put on trial again, and so he's not going to leave. It's his get out of jail free card. That's how she's. But it's a very stretched argument, nevertheless. Yeah. So that is a relatively decent argument. Wait a minute now. Nixon's pardon was predicated on whether or not charges could be brought up against him. The question is whether or not charges in federal court or in even state courts, district courts, for heaven's sakes, like Fulton County, could be brought to bear on Trump. Or was this something that Congress could have pursued? I think that's the $10,000 question. What is in front of the Supreme Court is the fundamental question: can a president be indicted for supposed crimes committed while in office by our court system in general? Can our courts, can some judge in Illinois say, because Trump engaged in insurrection, he's not allowed to be on our ballot, and then go back to issuing traffic citations or enforcing traffic citations? Can a Supreme Court in Colorado knock Trump off the ballot? Can a corrupt DA with her boy toy in Fulton County, Georgia, bring charges against Trump for what he did as president? That's the question. It's not whether can Congress do it. It's called impeachment. We have a process to hold a president accountable for potential illegal activity in office. It's called impeachment. It's called the United States Congress. They can do that. But can just any willy-nilly, attorney general or prosecutor out there or state Supreme Court do that? That's the fundamental question they're going to have to deal with. And I don't think the Nixon pardon settled that. I'd have to look at in detail the rationale that Ford gave, but the sense that I got was that Ford was concerned that the DC legislators would continue to want to try, just like they did with Trump after he left office. There was a trial in the Senate. It wasn't taken seriously to determine whether or not he engaged in insurrection, and of course he was acquitted. So that would be an example of something that Nixon could have been subject to, as opposed to local and state, or even just more broadly federal court system. Because then the problem is that then a president could literally be indicted for anything and everything. It would be open season to be a green light to weaponize lawfare against past presidents you don't like, and will be no different than Brazil or Guatemala, and just jailing presidents after they served a term. Who would want to serve a term out there? Who would want to make hard decisions, right? So that's the fundamental question. So that's, to me, the material issue. And then the formal issue really is just, so what? So Gerald Ford interpreted the presidency in that way. That doesn't mean the Supreme Court is going to interpret the presidency as not having immunity that way. So so you can go that direction as well. Who cares if the pardon of Nixon is predicated on the assumption that he could be indicted? What the Supreme Court is going to have to determine is that assumption correct? That's in effect what it is. So there you go. But at least Rachel Maddow's giving us an argument. At least she's not, again, one of these clowns that uses these virtue signaling temper tantrums as replacements for actually seasoned argument. Robin, why would Trump need to be pardoned for bogus charges? No, granted, yeah. That's what we're all saying. But if he is convicted, that's where pardons come in. Even where more and more information is coming in that Nixon, this whole thing around Nixon was a deep state setup. That's what Tucker is talking about. Nixon was the single most popular president of the 20th century. He won the biggest landslide in American politics in 1972. And so this was the deep state's way of taking him out. So, Christina, Dr. Steve, can you start an @Team YouTube campaign on X to get your notification restored? That worked for another channel I watched that was demonetized. I will. Let's. Hey, Josh, if you don't mind, maybe that's something we can talk to Hannah about, our producer. If you can just send a note to her @Team YouTube campaign on X to get a notification, our notifications restored, our monetization restored. Thank you, Christina. It's a great idea. Dave, what are the essential values we should build our renewed American civilization around? Well, it's faith, family, and freedom. But so what we're finding around the world is that the religious sacred, the religious foundations that forged civilizations got covered up under layers and layers of modernist concrete and, technocratic aspirations. There was a sense that modern man had come to the fore. He had come to the height of human evolution and didn't need the religious traditions from which all of our civilizations were emerged. What is happening around the world right now is that modernist Babel project is collapsing. It's falling apart. It fell apart in the Soviet Union. It fell apart in communist China in many respects. It's falling apart. It's fallen apart in secular Turkey. It's fallen apart in secular India, colonized India. It's falling apart in colonized Africa. And it's falling apart in secular America. This notion that a secularized society made up of supposed rule of law, corporate capitalism, and woke human values, human rights, that was going to be this ongoing, progressive, perpetual society, that's just falling apart everywhere we look. Most particularly our cities, as we're seeing it. It's just dilapidating to points of it's even hard to look at. And so what's happening as a result is that religion, the religious foundations for all the different human civilizations are springing back to the surface. So the Russian-American sociologist Petirim Sorokin argued, he's the founder of the Department of Sociology at Harvard University. He argued that all the religious foundations of civilizations don't disappear. They're still there. They're still wrapped up in the way the civilization does life, but they can get covered up in what he called sensate culture. And that's a culture that tries to do civilization completely disregarding religious foundations. He argued that over time, those sensate civilizations end up running out of steam. They end up just literally running out of the resources necessary for constantly renewing civilization, which requires an eternal reference point, which is where religion kicks in as having inexhaustible resources for the continual renewal of civilization. He argued that those don't disappear. They're always under the surface. And so when the sensate society begins to fall apart, the religious foundation blossoms again and springs forward once again, either in the original religion or in a new one. A new one will have to replace it, very much like we saw with the end of the Greco-Roman pagan world and the rise of the Christian empire. So what we're seeing all throughout the world is the blossoming, springtide flourishing of the classical civilizational religions. So Orthodoxy in Russia having a power it hasn't had since the days of the Tsar. Taoism and Confucianism in China. As a matter of fact, President Xi has argued China is fundamentally a Confucian society today, and he basically sees himself as a Confucian emperor, instituting what's known as the Mandate of Heaven. We're seeing that in the Persian world with a new religion, of course, which is Shiite Islam in Iran, and with the rise of the Houthis in Yemen and Hezbollah in Syria. We're seeing that with Sunni Islam in Saudi Arabia. We're seeing the Ottoman-like aspirations of Erdogan in Turkey. We're seeing Pan-Africanism just explode, particularly in the Sahel region in Africa. Everywhere we look, and then of course India, we can't. Narendra Modi and the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party, just absolutely flourishing in a truly Indian politics that's reawakening what's called Hindutva, which is the Hinduification of the whole of Indian society. We're seeing something comparable happening here in the United States. This is why the media is so freaked out about the rise of Christian nationalism. I don't care what you call it. To me, it's not a big deal what you call it. But we just had a poll that just came out and found, what was it? Something like 70% of the public was totally cool with Christian nationalism. They thought Christian nationalism was kind of neat. So the idea here is that if we're going to have a truly prosperous, flourishing, fruitful society, it's going to have to be a society that is rooted in the institutions of faith, family, and freedom. And that means that the church, the Christian church, and all of its different outworkings, because we tend to have a marketplace of spirituality here in the United States. We don't have an established church like they do in Russia or even in UK. But in this disestablished space of faith, the church is going to have to be the place, the institutional place that begins to sort of, I won't say rewrite the rules, but it's going to have to provide the organizational infrastructure for a society that rises up, that values family. Christians have an overwhelming fertility advantage, for example, over secular liberals. That values obviously community. And the importance of community in shaping our moral obligations, of mutuality. The biggest problem with wokeness is that it's all entitlement and no mutuality. It's all, you need to serve me because I am this oppressed person. So you have to bend your knee to me and my wants and my needs. Oh yeah, okay, that's fine. But what are you going to do for us? I don't have to do anything. So there's no mutuality in wokeness. Whereas in Christianity, mutuality it's even in our public, we even call our politicians public servants. In Europe, they're called ministers. They're supposed to serve. There's supposed to be a mutuality. So the family, the church, and the community of mutuality and an economy of grace become the primary building blocks for a truly free and flourishing civilization. So faith, family, and freedom, I think, become the seeds that gave birth to our nation, the greatness of our nation in the first place, and can give birth to the greatness of our nation once again. Thank you, Dave. Lynn, they get rid of Joe. What do they do with Kamala? That's what every Democrat is asking right now. That's what I have no idea. They have no idea. That's why I think they're going to keep Joe in the end. They just don't have anyone better. I don't know what they're going to do with Kamala. Yeah, honestly, they're scared to death of her. Azita, what do you think of the Fannie trial? Yeah, it looks like it's falling apart again. I haven't done a video on it just because I'm waiting for some, how do you want to put it? A clear sign of where it's going. We already see this thing should be thrown out, obviously. And again, they don't even have to, the whole point is they don't even have to prove anything. The very fact that they admitted that they had an affair, Willis and Wade, Nathan Wade together, the very fact that that's illicit behavior enough. That's enough to throw them off. So we'll see. But this judge, it seems to me this judge is trying to show to the public precisely why he's going to take them off this case, and whether anybody else will take it. I couldn't see anybody wanting to touch this with a 10-foot pole. The very fact that you're hearing in those montages among the legacy media that their efforts at lawfare are collapsing, the very fact that they're all admitting that the Fulton County case is basically imploded is enough for me. But we'll see. Lita, do you know what happens with this kind of illness? They suddenly really collapse and you can't do a thing with them. Ask any doctor. I'm not sure what you're talking about there, Lita. Sorry, I can't respond to that. America the Free, the polls were strongly in Republicans' favor in the 2022 midterms, but results were disappointing in comparison to expectation. What will be different in 2024? Yeah, that's that. It all comes down to who's going to be in that RNC chair. So that's going to be the number one difference. The main difference. The purpose of an RNC chairman is to make sure we win elections. That's their job. That's what they're supposed to do. And Ronna McDaniel was an absolute abject failure. The fact that she was in there as long as she was itself a crime. So that's what we're going to have to keep an eye on and see. Laura Trump, Eric's wife, she looks like she's going to, I think she's a shoo-in for co-chair. And for her, the big thing is mail-in ballots. We cannot allow Democrats to amass that kind of advantage, 200, 300, 400, 800,000 mail-in ballot advantage that we can't risk trying to overcome on election day, especially with the shenanigans we saw in Maricopa County, where they could shut down half of election day for a lot of people because of supposed equipment failures. So we're going to have a ballot harvesting strategy in 6 or 7 key swing states to make sure that we keep up with Democrats in the early vote so that they don't create a margin that becomes unassailable. And then if we keep up with them on that, just like what we did, by the way, this was the strategies we used in 2020 and 2022 in Florida. Florida had a massive get out the vote campaign for ballot harvesting prior to the election. And we actually won that, if I recall. We were either in parity with the Democrats or we were even a bit ahead of them in the mail-in ballots. And then on election day, Republicans always have an advantage. And then we just crush them on ED, election day. So that is going to be a big factor as well. And then hopefully we'll have some way of being able to verify, to be able to track electronic voting, to tabulate it and objectively and hold that accountable as well. Franz, would it be more difficult for Nikki Haley to give up her presidential campaign or for Chris Christie to give up French fries for left? Obviously, it would be harder for Nikki Haley to do it because she's getting checks. She's getting some stroked checks for her election interference, whereas Chris Christie's got to strike a check for his fries. So I think it's harder for Nikki because Nikki, the gravy train ends when she ends her presidential aspirations. I love that, Franz. You demand. Jules Squared, Steve, if he appealed, why is the money not on they're just trying, you know the answer to that, Jules. They're trying to make this as painful for him as possible so they can have all these victory laps over at MSNBC. This is all about Letitia James becoming governor of New York. This is all about Letitia James getting a gig at CNN. This is all about their careers. They're making it hurt for Trump so that their social capital rises in the eyes of their fellow leftists. That's all it is. The very fact this is being allowed to stand or happen without Supreme Court intervention is a crime. But unfortunately, I think Trump has got this. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Obviously, he doesn't look like he is. He knows he's got it. Whatever happens, he can pay it. He can, and again, he's only politically benefiting from it in the end. Even in New York, even New Yorkers seem to have had it. Lita, I know this is somewhat off the subject, but you once gave a wonderful talk on how everything in Western culture is subconsciously derived from a biblical worldview and vocabulary, and it's changes in ways that even atheists don't realize. I lost my links to it. Can you redirect me to some resources? My, oh my. Yeah, I mean, there was a talk I've given at the Association of Classical Christian Schools that gets into that, on how the church created a whole civilizational structure, of which our secular age is a sort of a mirror image. So canon law, the law of the Catholic Church in the 10th, 11th, and 12th centuries, the foundation for civic law that started to develop in the 15th, 16th, and 17th century. Harold Berman of Harvard shows that direct link. Or our whole conceptions of relation between church and state have to do with our notions of the incarnation of heaven and earth, and God and man in Christ, or the soul and the body, and so forth. Very, very unique to Christian cultures. Oh, I'm going to have to, Lita, you're a member of Insiders Club. Can you ask me on Monday night? Because that way I could probably have Hannah look it up for us while we're chatting, because nothing comes off the top of my head of what I know exactly what you're thinking about, and I know exactly the lecture I gave on that, but I can't even remember the name of the lecture because it's been a few years. But I've got some things. If you can remember, if Monday night, if you can come on out, I should be able to find a link for you while we're doing that. A very good book that does get into this, besides my work, is David Bentley Hart, a book called Atheist Delusions by David Bentley Hart, H-A-R-T, where it's excellent resource in terms of how the church structured Western society and our basic value system that people like Bill Maher exemplify, even though they never give credit to the Christian church for it. Again, and there are scholars. There's an Indian scholar in particular who studied this, and his name escapes me, where he talks about how religion provides the tropes of which secular society are what he calls the topoi, T-O-P-O-I. Religion provides the meta structure of which secular society is simply the technically syntagmatic structure, or it's simply the microstructure. It's the material manifestation of this sort of ideological metastructure. And why secular society always fails is it tries to do its material society irrespective of and without recourse to the macro structure. And so it ends up collapsing. It ends up falling apart. It ends up corrupting in itself. The good news, again, is that macro structure doesn't disappear and it resurges. And so that's why we see religious renewals happening all the time, all around the world, particularly now. Probably the single greatest religious renewal the world has ever seen. That's Rodney Stark of Baylor University. That was the sociologist. That's his assessment of what's going on today. Travis, good morning, Dr. Steve. Who do you think Trump should pick to be his VP? Yeah, I gotta be honest, Travis. And again, this is my European leanings and so forth. I am a big fan of RFK. To me, it's very similar to what Matteo Salvini of Lega, of the Italian League, did with Five Star, which is their populist left party. If you can unite populist right and populist left for the goal of toppling the establishment once and for all, that's the greatest victory we could possibly have in 2024. Then we can have a grand old time debating policy. But we've got to topple the deep state. We've got to topple the establishment. We've got to topple the rhino. That's what we've got to topple. So I think a Trump-Kennedy ticket, two of the most famous names, frankly, in America, would be amazing. But boy, whoever it is, it's got to be someone the establishment is more scared of than they are of Trump. That's why I think our RFK Jr. would be very good. Otherwise, they would just take out Trump and put in this new puppet, this new Mike Pence puppet for the establishment. So this is where I think a Ron DeSantis won't work. I think he blew it. It would have been. I think it was a Trump DeSantis ticket. I thought that was a done deal as of last year. But then DeSantis had a bunch of worm tongues whispering into his ear and convincing him, this is your time. This is your time. And obviously that was a disaster. So there's so many, but I'm not a big fan of like Tim Scott. I think he's too establishment oriented. Even Kristi Noem is a little too establishment for me. Vivek is a bit young, although Vivek could be great. But I see Vivek as having definitely a central role in Trump's cabinet. Vivek is with Trump virtually every single day now, so he's in the inner circle. That's for sure. He's going to be brilliant. So if you ask me, I just to single down a name, it's Kennedy. It's not because I agree with Kennedy on everything or anything like that. It's that Kennedy is 100% anti-establishment. I know he said things in the past that freak people. I get it. But if our number one goal is to crush the deep state once and for all, and because that's the source of all of our problems, Trump, Kennedy would do it. Gerald, isn't the judge over the Fannie hearing supposed to give a ruling today? He may be. We'll see. So we'll keep an eye on that. Dave, could you summarize the philosophy of Robert Kagan into one syllogism? Probably not. I don't know Kagan's work well enough. No, I can't. Ask me again on Monday night. I might be able to do a little bit of research on summarizing Kagan into a single syllogism. I don't want to do that now. I don't have the information on him that I should. I mean, I've read him. I know of him, but I don't think I'm qualified to do that. Franz, if our rights as Americans are bestowed by God, doesn't that create an inherent disconnect with the atheist worldview in the U.S. Constitution? Oh, yeah. I mean, America, America's not an atheist country. I mean, there's no way around that. I mean, you could try to redefine someone like Thomas Jefferson as an atheist, but he wasn't. He's not an atheist in terms of a hard, dogmatic, deliberate denial of the existence of what we call Gott in the ancient, or in the old German, the theos in the Greek, and that's absolute, infinite, eternal being in of itself that is not itself created. It, again, rationally speaking, it's the precondition for any contingent finite thing. All contingent finite things that were not here at one point, are here, and then are not here at some other point. anything that is dependent on anything else for its existence cannot account for its own existence. There has to be a being itself, an existence itself that never came into being, has always been. That is the foundation and ground for all contingent being. The idea that anyone could deny that is the epitome of irrationality. I mean, there's just no way around it to me. I don't see it. Again, maybe I'd be happy to be convinced, but so, and our founding fathers were not irrational. They were thoroughly rational, and they recognized that if rights were contingent, if your rights were something that could be, that were dependent, and that were qualified, then inevitably they could be taken away. And so the only way your rights could be unalienable, the only way your rights were permanent, is if they were rooted in a source that was not itself contingent. It's that simple. It's that easy. All politicians are contingent, right? All historical events are contingent, right? All dependent. You know, they don't have to necessarily be, and they can be changed. They're malleable. They can be coerced. They can be manipulated. Blah blah blah. The only way you and I can never, ever, ever be manipulated and coerced ultimately is if our rights are themselves non-contingent. If they are contingent, then they can be taken away by definition. It's that simple. Joan, is there a you scratch my back, I scratch yours thing going on with politicians? Do you think so, Joan? Trump endorsed our horrible Senator Wicker for re-election on Truth Social. Wicker endorsed Trump last year, which is suspicious since Wicker opposed the border wall and voted for Green New Deal. That's too bad, among other horrendous votes. The voters are enraged. You should see the comment. Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. Yeah, Joan. Look, I mean, hopefully just from the channel here, or just from all the other channels you avail yourself of, politics is a seedy business. I mean, even Tucker was asked about, what do you think about Putin and him, killing off his political opponents and so forth. And he didn't even flinch. I mean, Trump was asked this very same thing by Bill O'Reilly. Putin's a killer. Both of them said the same thing. In politics, you kill. But politics involves killing. It's not a good thing. I'm not defending it. It's just it's politics. It's the use of power. That's what it is. Polis is the study and art of power, of manipulation. That's why our founding fathers were brilliant in putting restraints on it to maximize individual freedom. And I would argue ecclesiastical freedom, freedom of community, faith, and the like. So, yeah. It could be a bump. It could be a really rough. It could be a rough sphere to study. It's fascinating, but it's also, it could be a really disillusioning sphere when you say, man, I really trusted this person, and they turn around and they did a deal with the devil because they thought it was a little devil. And it's a deal that was necessary in order to get this greater good. And so there are all kinds of compromises. There's just no way. So, I mean, if you're all about, no compromise whatsoever, then you're a terrible politician. You're not gonna last. Even Putin is an extraordinary compromiser. His geopolitics is one of the reasons why it's so brilliant, is the way he is able to compromise with the powers that be that surround him in the Baltic regions, in the Middle East, and China, India. Just pretty much everyone. That's the irony. The irony is everyone gets pretty much along with Putin. Putin's friends with China. He's friends with India. He's friends with Israel. Israel loves Putin. He's friends with Iran. He's friends with Saudi Arabia. That was almost an impossible one, since Iran and Saudi Arabia were such enemies. It's the West. It's a collective West that hates him because he's not going along with the globalism. But everyone else, Africa, they love him. They love because he is very shrewd and smart in how to compromise with other interests, so as to make sure that Russian interests are best represented given the factors that are in place. So there you go. So yeah, that's probably what you're experiencing right now. And sometimes, yeah, we get the raw end of it. Charlie, does Haley have to stay in the race in order to run as no name, or do you mean the no labels? Is that no? She can get out of the race and then go into no labels. But she said she's not going to do. I don't know. Again, to me, I think Nikki Haley's as about as irrelevant. I think Cornel West will get more votes than Nikki Haley at this point. She is so unpopular. The only votes she's getting in the end are from Democrats and left-leaning independents. Maybe a few Republicans are voting for, but and the Republicans that are voting for will vote for Trump in November. America the Free. There have been a lot of candidates mentioned for Trump's VP position. Which of them concern you? Let me go through the list in my head. Tim Scott, I don't like. I just think he's way too establishment. Kristi Noem makes me nervous. I think she's a little too establishment. I used to think that way of Elise Stefanik until she started defending the 2020 election, pushing back on CNN, saying that it was corrupt. Then I said, all right, she's okay. As long as, to me, that's a Rubicon. You cross that. That's a good Rubicon, right? A good Rubicon to cross. You cross it. You're willing to defend that, like Vivek has been, and so forth. You're in our camp. Lee Zeldin, I think, is fine. I don't have an issue with Lee. I obviously have a big issue with DeSantis just because of I found DeSantis to be very petty. He's a great governor, horrible national candidate at this point. Oh, you're gonna have to remind me. I'm reaching some limits there. Who else? Carrie Lake, I think, is just all in on the Senate right now, and the polls are starting to move in her direction. And Trump crushes it in Arizona, which looks like he will, 4, 5, 6 points, she should win easily. So I think she's going to stick. She's going to stay with the Senate race. That's all I've got on my head for now. So that'll give you an idea. Ironically, I think like half of them, I'm like, really? Are we really going there? They're way. You do not want anyone friendly with the establishment. That's for sure. That's the number one criteria, because we're not going to get rid of the establishment with friendly faces. Joshua, I have bad feelings of Nikki Haley. Haley switched sides after being nominated by the Dems at their convention coming up because they realize they have no one who will stand a chance against Trump. Do you see that as a viable possibility? No, because even we've seen Nikki Haley before. Charlie Crist, Florida. Enough said. Yeah, Charlie Crist. We saw it with Mike Bloomberg. We saw it with Arlen Specter. Anyone who flips for whatever reason, Democrats don't trust. They don't care for them. They don't like them. And so they think, again, in the powers that be, in the back rooms where they're stroking the check, sure, she might feel empowered to get involved in Democrat politics because she is a Democrat at this point. She's a default Democrat. But Democrats as a whole will not back her. No, they'll back Newsom. And again, because she's not going to be the sole heir. She will be contested. And that's when you'll start seeing all the different factions of the Democratic Party come out. David, if I remember correctly, Texas has some special provision in their constitution that can legally secede. So that's what Dan Miller argues, and the Texas National Movement argues that they do have it in there because they were a sovereign republic before joining the Union. So, and obviously that's got to get worked out. I don't know based on, I'm not an expert on Texas law. I'm assuming pretty much anyone can secede, but it seems, and Texas's Republican Party has put it in their platform that they do want to see a referendum on Texas independence in an upcoming election. So, I mean, I just see the ball is rolling on this. And if Washington becomes irredeemable, Texas is going to secede. You're going to see Brexit Part 2. You're going to see Texas. It's going, whether or not what's going to happen afterward is anyone's guess. I don't know. But Texas is going to secede. America is going to begin breaking up. Red states are going to leave. They're not going to be part of a permanent rot of DC. It's just not going to happen. Ray, how about Tulsi? That's who I left out. I knew I was leaving somebody. I was like, there's somebody there. I like Tulsi. Again, for me, Tulsi represents an anti-establishment figure. So that's the way I'm thinking of 2024. 2024 is not about closing the border. It's not about bringing manufacturing back home. It's not about restoring our traditional values. All of that can happen if we get rid of the deep state and the establishment rhino Republicans. If we get rid of the deep state, if we drain the swamp effectively, and then remember, you don't want a power vacuum. Replace them with hardcore MAGA loyalists inside DC. We will have a permanent secured border. We will be energy independent permanently with permanent industrial manufacturing base here at home, and we will have a permanently flourishing traditional value base in our country, led by particularly by the Christian church. So Tulsi would be right there, right next to Trump, standing by his side to destroy the establishment. She hates the establishment, and the establishment hates her. So, Azita, do you believe Putin has the votes of the Russian people? Yeah, overwhelmingly. There are a number of different polling firms that are very good, that scholars use, that are quite reputable to assess Russian attitudes. And Trump, in the next election, would easily win with about 75-80% of the vote. He's very much like Bukele, Nayib Bukele of El Salvador. He's loved even by expats, Russian expats, who probably left. A lot of them left in order to pursue particularly economic and career opportunities that they can't get in Russia. So they're here. But you get them talking about Putin. You get them talking about Crimea. You get them talking about the Donbass. They're 100% behind him. Again, for right or for wrong, it's irrelevant. That's what's happening. Richard, thoughts on Kash Patel or Mike Flynn for VP, RFK Jr. for AG? Yeah, so that's what I mean. That's kind of where it's all. So for me, the VP, when all is said and done, is he or she is there as secure job security for Trump. If the VP is accepted and friendly to the establishment, they will do a third impeachment. They're gonna have Russiagate 2.0. They're gonna do everything they can to get rid of Trump. If the VP is somebody they're more frightened of than Trump is their best bet, and they're going to do whatever they can to keep Trump happy and healthy and in power. So that's the only key core qualifier for the VP. Rich Barris is saying the same thing. Robert Barnes, who's been, by the way, litigating on behalf of Amos Miller in Lancaster. He was in my backyard the other day. We'll have him on. I think we'll have him on sometime next week to talk about the Amos Miller case in Pennsylvania. That's galvanizing the Amish to vote Trump like you wouldn't believe. It's so beautiful. Again, that's where this weaponized legalism ends up blowing up in their faces. That's bottom line. That's the qualification for a VP. I don't care how they shake out. I mean, I see Flynn as like a perfect, Secretary of Defense. I mean, it just seems to me that would be magnificent, and just clean up the wokeness there. That'd be unbelievable. Kash Patel is good. Again, I don't know if is he good? Is he VP material? Yeah, I mean the deep state would be scared to death of Kash. Absolutely. Kash might make a great attorney general, by the way, too, being a brilliant lawyer as well. RFK Jr. would be a brilliant AG. Wouldn't that be amazing, right? Just like his dad. So, Richard, can you get rid of the deep state without getting rid of the Federal Reserve Bank? Good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. I think you can. Because the NSA, I mean, when you're dealing with deep state, you're dealing with permanent Washington, you're dealing with NSA, right? You're dealing with the CIA, FBI, all the three-letter agencies. Federal Reserve is not three-letter, therefore no. But Federal Reserve seems to be, I see, so maybe I'm wrong on this. We'll have to think this one through. But I see the Federal Reserve more as enabling the endless wars. The Federal Reserve, just by pumping out cash based on the financing of our debt with foreign nations, the Federal Reserve allows us to be able to spend on frontier projects that we would never, ever, ever spend on if we actually relied on real money, real estate as money, gold, silver, and so on. So I'd have to think through the connection. Is there a deeper connection? And again, and then that runs us through the military-industrial complex, which is probably the platform, when all is said and done, of the deep state, since the CIA is there to launch wars that our military can't, that are illegal for our military to do. It's a good question. That really does bring us all the way back to 1913, doesn't it? I'd have to think it through. Great question, Richard. Awesome. David, as a last resort, will the Dems talk to Tulsi about running for him? Tulsi's done with the Democrats. They won't go near her. Jules just watched an interview with RFK Jr. He's so close to Trump and believes he is. How would that happen? Republicans and Democrat. RFK is awesome, though. Yeah, no, granted. No, it's so again, remember the political animosity that defined our politics for ages, if you think it through, for decades, left versus right, Democrat versus Republican, liberal versus conservative. Trump changed all that. 2016 changed all that. Actually, it was really in many respects, Reagan was the precursor of it, but it was the Tea Party in 2009, 2010, where we really started to see in the polling attitude shift, where people no longer identified as left versus right, conservative versus liberal, Republican versus Democrat. The animosity was no longer horizontal. Now it was vertical. It was the people versus the political class. It was Americans versus oligarchs. It was the ruled versus the rulers. That became the new political animosity. And so in 2016, when Trump said, we're going to drain the swamp, we're going to go after these stupid politicians. I mean, think about it. In 2016, he took out 15 of the GOP's finest. We're talking people like, Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Chris Christie. I mean, anybody who was everybody in the GOP's sort of Hall of Fame of politicians ran in 2016. Trump slaughtered them. He slaughtered all of them. John Kasich, do you remember John Kasich? He was playing the Nikki Haley role back then. He wouldn't bow out, even though he kept losing and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, when all said and done, he won because they were still playing off of, well, we're not Democrats. We're not Democrats. He won because he said, I'm not a politician. I'm not a politician. And that's what RFK is doing. So it's realigning our politics. So that's what's known as civilizational populism. It's the people who alone are trying to defend our border, our economy, and our culture versus the ruling class, the oligarchs who are selling our borders, our economy, and our culture out to nefarious globalist interests. And RFK is on our team. It's that simple. And that's it. Love you guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. If any updates come in, I'll make sure to do a quick vid and update you as well. God bless. Have a wonderful weekend. See you on Monday.